smartphone. This is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
Welcome to News Hour from the BBC World Service. I'm James Kamarasamy. On this special edition of the programme, the Afghan government has collapsed and the president has fled the country as the Taliban are poised to regain power in Kabul for the first time in 20 years. There is chaos at the city airport as people scramble to leave the country. We'll hear from someone who tried to get to the airport and now fears for his life.
I can be killed anytime. If they find out that I was an interpreter working for the Americans, they will definitely cut my head off.
We speak to an angry Afghan minister.
Nobody could have done this without support from the outside. It is unbelievable to see the transition of one power to the other so quickly.
And we'll get international reaction. All of that coming up after the latest news.
BBC News, I'm John Shea. The Taliban have entered the Afghan capital Kabul after President Ashraf Ghani fled the country, leaving the militants in nationwide control for the first time in 20 years. In a statement, Mr. Ghani said he had left to prevent what he described as a flood of blood. He didn't say where he'd gone. He said the Taliban had won by the sword and guns and were now responsible for protecting the honour, wealth and self-esteem of the Afghan people. Our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette, is following developments.
The Taliban have entered Kabul from many directions. The Taliban leadership likes to talk about a highly centralised, highly disciplined organisation. And in some ways, it is an organisation which takes local fighters, take orders from their local commander, the local commander takes orders from the regional commander from the zonal commander, etc., etc., etc. But it's not surprising that you have all pumped-up fighters who've been on the outskirts of Kabul for some time. Finally, they're in the capital. Extraordinary sight, the glittering capital city of Afghanistan.
A BBC reporter in Kabul, Malik Mudassar, says the high-security green zone, where most of the foreign diplomatic missions are located, has been abandoned by the Afghan security forces. He says Taliban fighters can be seen on the roads of Kabul.
There are gunshots, and these are not ordinary rifle gunshots. I could hear like heavy guns. They're firing. I don't know if they're fighting or they're firing to air. There are no reports from officials that what's happening in the city right now. And from here, I have seen armed personnel on the government vehicles, and they clearly look like militants.
The former Afghan President Hamid Karzai has said a coordination council has been formed to manage the transfer of power. It's made up of three people: Mr. Karzai himself, Abdullah and Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, a former warlord turned politician. Mr. Karzai has asked government forces and the Taliban to protect the Afghan people. John Simpson has more details.
The Taliban have a fearsome reputation in Afghanistan, but as long as the Americans and their allies were on hand, most people felt safe enough. Ever since February last year, though, when President Trump's officials signed the supposed peace agreement with the Taliban's political leaders, the fear in Kabul and other towns and cities has grown. Once the foreign forces started leaving, the Taliban could make their move.
The American flag has been taken down at the US Embassy in Kabul as the building was evacuated. NATO says all commercial flights at Kabul airport have been suspended as evacuations supervised by the military take place. Russia and Turkey say they'll be keeping their embassies in Kabul open after receiving assurances of security from the Taliban. World News from the BBC. Haiti's Civil Protection Service says more than 700 people are now known to have died in Saturday's powerful earthquake. Many more have been injured. The quake, with a magnitude of 7.2, struck the southwest of the